Hello and welcome back. Today I come to you during these troublesome times to teach you more on the history of the chair. It's believed that chairs have been around for about 5,000 years. Originally they were thought to have been invented by the ancient Egyptians. Now, not every Egyptian had a chair. If you had a chair in Egypt, you were really cool. Like, only the richest people in Egypt owned chairs, so if you had a chair, you were the top dog around those parts. And the Egyptians, being the wacky, fun people that they were, brought a lot of weird superstition into the making of chairs. Basically, they thought that chairs needed to be really simple and represent kind of nature, otherwise it would upset the balance in the universe, and the chairs could end all of existence. Now, next up along this line, you've got the Greeks and the Romans. Now, these guys were real slow developers. It took them a lot longer than the Egyptians to make a chair. You see, they did it in 700 BC, which is around 2,000 years after the Egyptians managed to do it. So obviously the chair, a real difficult concept for the Romans to get their heads around. And even then, the Romans and the Greeks didn't make chairs specifically for sitting. No, the Greeks made chairs for Zeus, because in a lot of their artwork, they had pictures of Zeus up in Mount Olympus, and he'd be sitting on this big throne. And basically they thought, we'll make a chair out of that. And the last of the chairs in the before times, in the BCs, were the ancient Mexicans. They invented a chair called the Ikpali. Now, not much is known about the Ikpali, other than that some paintings have the Ikpali in. Other than that, no information. Nobody knows any of the history behind the Ikpali, as far as I can tell anyway. There's not a Wikipedia page for it, so I can only assume it doesn't exist. Right, now, next to these early birds to catch on to this, the wacky concept of chairs, is the Chinese. Now, before the Tang dynasty took over China, this was about 618 to 907 AD, the Chinese people, in Chinese culture, it was predominantly that you would sit on the floor on sitting mats. Now, the concept of sitting on the floor is really popular in China, and it still is really. It's quite a traditional thing to do. But during the 12th century, some missionaries, they popped over from the West, I think from India, and they basically showed the Chinese people, here's a chair, or it was like a type of camp stool, I think they showed them. And the Chinese people were so impressed by this thing that they could sit on that wasn't the floor, that they adopted it. They picked it up straight away, and then from there on, China is using chairs all over the place. Chairs were used a lot during the medieval era and that kind of time period. Now, these are traditional chairs, thrones, and like really posh chairs, because usually a lot of the noblemen used the chairs. Chairs were still quite a privilege to have. If you were a peasant, you couldn't have a chair, really. It was quite difficult to come by. That is, however, until the Renaissance era, which started around the 15th century. Now, basically what happened here was, the modernization of the world, the Renaissance, and people started thinking, we need more chairs. And during the Renaissance period, there was a big dip in the rankings of chairs. Basically, beforehand, chairs meant you were big, you were the big man around, you had a lot of power. But after and during the Renaissance period, there was a big decrease in the amount of social status that chairs carried with them. Basically, more and more people were getting chairs, and basically took away the social importance of a chair. If you owned a chair, you weren't the big man anymore, because everyone had chairs. Now, it wasn't until about the 1800s where the first modern chair was really starting to come about. Some bloke in Italy, an Italian cabinet maker called Giuseppe Gaetano Descalzi, was commissioned to produce a real cheap chair, using less expensive materials, and it's lighter so you can carry it about. You don't want these big thrones anymore. And basically he came up with the first original design for what would later become the most commonly used type of chair nowadays. Then after that, watch out, because it's the 1840s and the Industrial Revolution's just hit hard. Now we've got mass production everywhere, and all of a sudden chairs are being pumped out like no tomorrow. Everybody's got chairs, nobody knows what to do with all these chairs. And basically, all of a sudden, what used to be this big commodity, this thing that people sought after, is now becoming something that everybody has access to real easy, and they're all over the place, most commonly used. And that's basically the end of the story. You've got stuff in between, the boring stuff. In the 1840s, Charles Darwin, he kind of made the office chair. That was a little side story, nobody cares about that though. And you've got the late 70s, Wilfred Dolphin, he made some real comfy, he was tasked to make office chairs less bad and make them actually comfy to sit on. Unfortunately, I don't think he's succeeded, because they're still not very comfy to sit on. But even so, we've got chairs now, they exist, and they're out there. You better watch out, because they might come for you. But subscribe to this channel and like this video, and most certainly the chairs will not find you. I assure you of that, and I will see you in the next episode.